I was in Washington, D.C. this week, and we did a number of really interesting interviews with senators and members of the House. And today we're going to look at my interview with Cory Booker. I sat down for these interviews alongside progressive host Jesse Dollemore. So you'll hear both of us talking to Senator Booker. We talked about a lot of different things. Let's take a look at that right now.
I think that really one of the hardest things, I was just saying this to my girlfriend,
Good catch up.
that if we're all, we're not in our 20s anymore, I should just say.
Speak for yourself.
But I think one of the secrets of life is the ability to go from utter discouragement to utter discouragement and not lose your energy and enthusiasm. And when I meet people like John Lewis, who in his final months of his life, I went with him on a road trip from Atlanta to Plains, Georgia to hear Jimmy Carter teach Sunday school. And people, it was one of the more, I had never seen anything like it in my life. People were waiting out from the night before, sleeping out like it was some kind of top concert. And it was ecumenical. There were Hindus there, Muslims there, Jews there, Christians there, all coming to hear Jimmy Carter teach Sunday school in the last months or years of his life. And on that road trip, I asked John Lewis tough questions like, you made all these advancements in voting rights. Now you watch the Supreme Court gut the Voting Rights Act. You made sort of these advancements in ideals of equality that are now being vilified and attacked by Donald Trump. And yet he wasn't fazed. And he just seemed to let me know that this pathway is not linear towards justice. And so I had this discouraging moment on the floor like a week or so ago where one of these Republicans who I've worked with across the aisle, and I would never characterize him as, like, he and I have vast differences, but we have found ways to do things together. And I was teasing him about that. I was saying, you being a friend, if you're going to run for re-election, I'll come down and tell people how awful you are. That might help you. And then he looked very sad at me and he said, I'm not running for re-election. And the bad thing for you is that when I leave, you're going to get somebody that is, as you said, a different type of Republican. Mm-hmm. In other words, and he would say he wouldn't even use that word, probably Republican, because of what we're seeing, which is not about a party, it's about a person right now. And that person, right or wrong, you fall in line. And that's why
it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, this is sort of, it kind of gets us right into where I think we wanted to start, which is like, there's sort of two things happening simultaneously right now. On the one hand, we have exactly what you're describing, where these are not disagreements as to like, should the top tax rate be 37 or 39.6?
Right,
these are much
right.
bigger sort of disagreements where we've been saying, is there even any, can you even work with some of these folks? On the other hand, there are these little cracks that do seem to be forming.
Yes.
On Iran.
Yes.
On he really was the anti-war candidate, or
Right.
he wasn't, or it's technically not a war, or whatever. What do you think is more, are these cracks relevant in terms of your ability to get things done that you want to get done? Or is this really just a facade of independence that we're seeing from Republicans? And at the end of the day, it's oppose anything Democrats want to do.
So the best answer to that question is I don't know. You just don't know. And you have to keep whacking away at that implacable wall of resistance, no matter what, even if those cracks are real or not, you can't stop hitting the wall. And look, I'm like, my friends tell me I'm like, I'm a prisoner of hope always. I'm so optimistic, but this is a day that I'm really having a hard time. I'm struggling right now. And I think it was the end of my day yesterday where I watched these incredible working Americans within a union, SEIU, who are working hard. I know what they do for their union. I know the money they make, but they're crowding here in the heat of yesterday to stand out and protest this bill with horribly difficult stories about, even though they're working full-time jobs, how barely they're holding it together. And then this is what I went home to tell my girlfriend about, and it gets me emotional. This woman who's out here struggling, older woman, still working a full-time job, reminding me of a relative of mine, says to me, we're going to keep fighting. And by the way, Cory, I'm a monthly contributor to you. And that's what hit me, that this woman who's struggling has put her faith in me, whatever it is, a reoccurring monthly donation of like, what is it, maybe $1 or $5, because she wants to do everything she can to fight for the health care of other Americans. And so I honestly, the suffering in the world right now, the from Ukraine to Gaza to nobody's talking about Sudan, the greatest. And I know the Americans that used to be there trying to provide aid and support that are no longer in Sudan. I was standing there on the Chad-Sudan border seeing the horrors of human suffering that have now been pulled away. And so today is a day where I'm just like keeping it together, keeping fighting, keeping whacking at the wall, but my heart's broken and my spirit is struggling. But I will tell you this, there's too much on the line for us to stop fighting every day to keep trying to win this battle.
Let me piggyback off of that. I think that, it's a great segue, because so many people in the party, my audience, I'm certain David's audience, are so disappointed right now, or disheartened. You talked about going from disappointment to disappointment and trying to keep your resolve. What do you say to my audience that want resistance, they want a fight, and they want people to be standing up to Donald Trump? What's the plan going forward to stop leaning into allowing Donald Trump even an inch by voting for his legislation and his agenda and his nominees? When are we going to actually be an opposition party and not the minority party?
So I want to answer that question in two ways. One, and I'll be as brief as possible. So as the only senator that goes home to a community, black and brown community below the poverty line, where we don't mistake wealth with worth, where there are struggles going on that so many Americans face from all backgrounds, but we don't talk about enough. And so in my community, you see the ravages of gun violence. And by the way, I always tell people this, when I was mayor, all my shootings except for one were done by people who illegally acquired guns. And this is a president that is tearing down the ATF to enforce our gun laws in order to have more money to abduct people off, more resources to abduct people off the streets who no threat to us whatsoever. And I'll never forget my tenant president when I lived in the high-rise projects, whose son was murdered in the building in which I would eventually move into, who just always taught me that what real hope is, and I face again. I've been shattered by the children that I knew, all the kids that used to hang out in the lobby. I shouldn't say all, a lot of the boys that used to hang out in the lobby, Hassan Washington, I can go Shahad, all are dead right now from gun violence. And yet somehow Miss Jones and others would say that real hope is just not letting despair have the last word. So the first thing I just want to tell people is, do not let him have the last word. Do not let him be the main character of this story. Keep the focus on the fight. Keep the focus on the people you're fighting for. Let them be your motivation. Now, as far as the larger Democratic Party politics, we as a people, all of us, have an obligation to find more creative ways of fighting this battle than the typical stuff. I don't know, as an opposition party, you and I can disagree on tactics, but much of what we're doing here is not breaking through to the larger public. I'm coming from a hearing. Much of what I said there, as passionately as I said this, not breaking through. We've got to find creative ways of helping the folks that are on the sidelines right now get into the game. Because King said this, that we have to repent for is not just the vitriolic words, violent actions, the bad people, but the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. And so the strategies that I always try to tell my team we've got to do is fight them in the courts, fight them procedurally in every way we can, but we've got to find a way to be an ignition point and get more people understanding what's at stake and more of the good people into the game, because we outnumber them. I know we do. And so that's what I'm pushing my colleagues and others. This is why we did the 25 hours on the floor. This is why we did the sit-in on the steps. This is why we're already plotting what are the next good trouble we're going to do to try to get more people activated and engaged.
Is there or are there specific either policy or action items that you think would be most effective at getting people together in the context that, for all of our criticisms of the way that MAGA has run politics, Donald Trump is able to come up with some ideas that really coalesce people. They're bad ideas, they're based on often incorrect information, but whether it's trade or immigration or crime, they get people united, putting their smaller differences aside and voting together to win elections. After the election, it's haywire, right? But for the purposes of winning the elections, they've come up with these kernels. What are they for the Democratic
Well, so
Party?
I hope you guys will let me come sit down with you before the next election and a year from this November. Still a long way away, but I'm gonna just put a bookmark to tell you that we had better policies as a party. When you polled them independent of the people, more people agreed with our policies. But he was a better salesman.
Yes.
He was he was communicating in spaces that we didn't even communicate in.
Yep.
You know, they were on Discord and Twitch. They were doing the kind of communications that we should have been doing. So they had a better they had a great messenger, whether you like him or not. They were using the mediums. And then the messages. And part of that message is, do you trust me enough to know that even I'll do the things I say I'm going to do?
Right.
And I think that both parties have lost the trust game. Why? How do I make a statement like that? Is because you basically had two people. One got 49.7%. The other one got 49.3%. Most of America the majority of Americans voted against both candidates. There wasn't this like wave election where I believe that leader has captured my moral imagination, makes me feel in my heart that their vision of America includes me and my family. And so if we're going to be a Democratic Party, it's not just the policies, but I want to be able to say to people, this is a shitty country to raise a child in. We don't give maternal care. We don't give paid family leave. We push women out back into the workplace a week or two after they've had their kid. It's more expensive in most states to have childcare than it is to go to state tuition college. That we are the worst on things like giving tax breaks to working class people. We give them all to the policies. We need to have the messages, but we're losing our faith as a society in the very idea of the American dream. And the next leaders need to be able to redeem the dream and restore the trust that we can do something. Now that's electoral politics. My fear right now is how many thousands of Americans will die before the next election because they don't have health care. How many thousands of Americans will die because their emphysema or their asthma is going to get so much worse because of the particulate matter that Donald Trump has allowed polluters to pay. How many public lands from Idaho to New Jersey are they going to give away to oil companies and others that we can never get back together? Right. I'm worried that between now and that election, the harms that they're going to do are going to become irreparable. They're going to cost people's lives. They're going to cost people's livelihoods. There's already an extinction level event going on for small businesses in this country because folks don't realize that as tariffs have made the baby carriage in the back seat hundreds of dollars more expensive, and that have hurt those businesses that can't pass along those charges. So that's why I get this question all the time and it pisses me off, but I have to answer it to people when I'm sitting with a reporter, usually more mainstream media than folks like you all, and they say to me, what are you going to do to save the Democratic Party? It polls lower than colonoscopies and cockroaches. And I say to folks, I'm not interested in saving the Democratic Party. Right now, I'm interested in serving the American people, not a frickin' party.
Yeah.
And I think actually in that answer is the secret for the Democratic Party. Because if we're all concerned about Democrats, screw that. Americans out there, most of us are barely affiliating with either one of the two parties now. They're just trying to make a way for their family. And we've got to get back to having leaders that are more concerned with people than parties.
Senator, thank you so much.
I have one more.
Yeah, please.
I love all of that.
Yeah.
But listen, we exist in a new political order. The old way of my good friend across the aisle, it doesn't exist anymore. So when is a bridge too far for elected officials to stop advancing the agenda of Donald Trump?
So, look.
Because we want a good partner in governance, and you don't have that now.
Yeah.
We're not governing if you're bending the knee to, not you specifically.
Right.
But
I want to address that because it has visited upon me. Like, so I'm trying to anonymize this, but there was something really bad happening to Americans working for government abroad. And I was able to reach out to somebody in the Trump administration that's name's not a necessarily household name, but I had that relationship. I'm not stopping him from doing a lot of this stuff, but the fact that this person knows me to be an honorable person and somebody I supported, even though I don't support the president, I was able to get that reversed. And so I hear people oftentimes saying we need moral absolutism. People want that right now. And I am willing to, I just need to tell folks that what we need is the best strategies to deliver results for people. And we may disagree on tactics, but if we start within our party creating this sense of moral absolutism, it's going to hurt our coalition. Because if everybody in your coalition agrees on everything, your coalition is not big enough. And so I've shown in my career, from my early days as a city councilman doing 10-day hunger strikes and fighting, living in a mobile home, I will go to great extremes in my service, but I'm not always going to agree on everything. Right now, I don't want to become Donald Trump just to beat Donald Trump. I was running for a town hall stage in Iowa when I ran for president in 2019, 2020, and I'm about to jump up on the stage, and a big guy, I'm a former tight end for Stanford, this guy looked like he was a former linebacker for Iowa State, and he goes, "Dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face." And I look at him and I go, "Dude, that's a felony, man."
Right.
And so I asked him if I could tease him. I jump up on the stage and I say this to a huge crowd of people. I said, "This guy said to me I should punch," and everybody roared in applause. And I was like, this is going to be a short run for president, but that's not how we win. Now, this is a big fight. People are like, oh, when they go low, you go high, da, da, da. I'm sorry. I have an Oscar-nominated documentary about me called Street Fight, about fighting in urban politics and winning, but not sacrificing my soul. And what I know from the people that I most herald in my life as heroes, from Harvey Milk to Alice Paul, these are incredible Americans in the suffrage movement and the LGBTQ movement that found ways to fight by not sacrificing their truth. And the best example is we didn't beat Bull Connor by bringing bigger dogs and bigger fire hoses. Yeah. What they were able to do, which is what we need to do in this moral moment, is they were able to say, as bad as they are, George Wallace, Bull Connor, we are not going to become them. The challenge is to ignite the people who are bystanders to history. And by them standing in front of them, they were able to call to the conscience of this country, and thousands of people joined their fight. The reason why this bill, literally I have to motivate myself in the morning to come back for another day of fighting, because this bill is so close to passing out of the Senate. And the reason why it is because right now, too many people's voices are not being heard. You know what Jefferson said. Jefferson said, when people fear their government, there is tyranny. When the government fears its people, there's liberty. Well, there are a whole bunch of senators here. How do I know it? Because they whisper it to me in the elevator that disagree with what Donald Trump is doing. But you know who they fear? They fear the president and his reprisals more than they fear the American people. Right. And you know what that means? That the equation to shift this lies on us, the American people, that telling those folks, if you vote against my health care, if you vote against my food stamps or my Meals on Wheels, if you vote against my disabled child, if you vote against the veteran in my state who just got fired by Doge, if you vote against them, I'm coming after your job. You better fear me more than you fear him, because your days are numbered. And until we shift that equation, these guys are going to follow that man to their detriment. Right now, we have a Republican Party that is laying down when they know that what Hegseth tweeting out plans on Signal to reporters, they know that he's unqualified for that position. I can go through from the beginning of his administration to now how many things I know that they know is not right, but they're following it because they're afraid of him more than they're concerned about the American people. And so, look, I will not agree with everybody on everything, but the big challenge right now, the things that make me get up in the morning or go to bed at night feeling so shattered, is because I am not worried about the next election. Days now we are from days of passing a bill out of this Senate that the majority of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents thinks is horrible. And it will have real effects on the kind of people I was with outside last night, who are doing everything they can, if standing in the heat for hours, giving dollars to elected leaders like me who they believe in. These are the people we've got to fight for right now. This is the test of our character. This is the moral moment. And in the way they responded in the civil rights movement, in the suffrage movement, in the environmental movement, and so many things that have altered our labor movement, altered our country. This is another crossroads for our country. And I'm praying people, your audience, will think to themselves, what more can I do in this fight to make those Republicans listen to me? And if they fail, I'm going to stay involved, and I'll make them answer for it in the next election.
You're good at this.
Thank you.
You should run for
Really
office.
I appreciate it. Right now, I just want to run some days, but we're going to all stay in the fight.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.